Early childhood educators will soon have dedicated time within their working hours for non-teaching tasks, such as lesson planning. It aims to further support their well-being in a growing sector of 28,000 teachers. That's up 20% from 2021. Elsa's Thung with more.
The mind of an educator is always working. During lessons, nothing escapes their notice.
Most of the time they are engaged with the children, where they will observe what they are doing, listen to what they are saying, and at the back of their mind they are thinking and just wondering how to make this a learning moment.
That's why having time to decompress and reflect is important to an educator. The Social and Family Development Ministry is working with the sector to strengthen the adoption of non-contact time.
These efforts are about supporting educators yourselves in your daily work and ensuring you can continue to grow and thrive under the right conditions within the profession.
One preschool operator already has this in place.
Sometimes we do have teachers going on annual leave, on your medical leave. Sometimes during this period, the non-contact time, the teachers have to go back to the class. But we are trying very best to give teachers non-contact time.
To deliver better holistic outcomes, numeracy and play-based learning were also identified as areas of focus.
I'm really hoping that parents can really take this as it's not really child's play, it's actually learning taking place, and play really will build their cognitive, their social-emotional skills when they learn to share, learn to collaborate, learn to problem solve.
Operators can also tap a new fund for projects that address teaching needs.
And to find out more about the two new domains added to early childhood learning, we have with us Sheena Tan, who is Deputy Centre Leader at M.Y World Preschool, and also Debbie Ong, who is a Curriculum and Pedagogy Specialist at NTUC Campus. Ladies, welcome to the show. Well, Sheena, let's start with you. We know that play-based learning is one of the two new domains that were announced today. So how is it different when a new area of focus like play is being defined as a domain in school?
I think now it has always been in early childhood, but now it's more critical. We know that it's critical development for our children, so it supports the whole child holistically for play.
And also, if we turn to Debbie now, we know that numeracy is also the other new domain. What does meaningful numeracy learning look like, especially for very young children? Can you paint a picture for us?
So numeracy as a new domain in early childhood learning communities is not a new domain to our sector. It is very highly relevant, and we are talking about numeracy not as a silo domain on its own, but really interconnected to the children's lives. So even for very young children, we talk about daily interactions, patterns that they can see in the environment, relationships between numbers, and or even simple matching in everyday things in the environment.
Yes. So there's sometimes the concern, especially from parents, right, that introducing numeracy very early can make it a little bit academic and also a little bit overwhelming for the young child. Does making this change or this domain change how it's being taught? And can you give us an example of how that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing?
You're right. So we will not be doing the downloading of information or drilling, but we will incorporate it very meaningfully into their lives of daily routines. It could be how they line up, how they alternate between girls and boys to form a pattern, or if they go for a neighborhood walk, they may be noticing numbers in the environment, or they may be counting the number of leaves or flowers that they see along the way. So it's very much integrated into their everyday moments in preschool.
Well, you know, both of you are also among the 110 pedagogical leaders that have been appointed at this time. What do you think this scale of appointment means for the sector, and how will that really change the way the sector develops? Maybe Sheena, you can tell us.
Okay, I think now it's more targeted and more intentional. So when there's this specialist guidance, it would help our educators, to really support our children in terms of, being supported with the equipped knowledge. Yes, with the content, and more intentional in delivering, the interactions with the children.
Well, Debbie, do you feel like that would be also similar for you in the way that you teach every day, or you go and spend time with the children, how will that change your daily routine?
I think we will be more reflective in our practices because after all, these appointments as pastels, we will be looking we'll deep dive into the domain of interest and we'll think about practical strategies that we can enhance the teaching and learning in our classrooms, which benefit the children's learning. So it's being a more intentional educator.
Yeah, speaking of being intentional and also helping a lot more children, Sheena, how can play-based learning better help students, especially those with diverse learning needs? How will this be applied more effectively to them?
Okay, so children, like what you have mentioned, classrooms are more diverse now. So, educators are also supporting children with different developmental needs or different learning profiles. So in terms of play, we incorporate like different sensorial materials, different texture, a variety of materials where they can, engage with. And as they are engaging with the materials, this helps to, naturally invite play, invite the conversations from the children, and that's where we are able to see the children's development.
Well, Debbie, it is increasingly fast-paced, and we're turning it into a kind of AI-dominated world. How important is it to then build these foundational skills early in the children? What are your thoughts on this?
In terms of play?
Yeah, with play or even with numeracy, integrating that into the day-to-day for preschool.
Yes. So while AI is very prevalent now, it cannot be replaced by our human touch. So our educators play that big role there to nurture the children through everyday interactions. Play is definitely a very integral way of how they learn, and numeracy is naturally incorporated in many components of their lives. So that is how we should build that foundation for learning, to build the holistic development of the children.
And Sheena, you also can chime in on why, especially perhaps in a very digital world, things like play and interacting more closely with each other can actually be a really important foundation to set in the children.
Yes, I agree. So in terms of, play and technology, like you've mentioned, we can also integrate the technology in how the children discover their answers, using technology, when they are wondering about, this, maybe this topic, and then through technology, and then in a form of, play where they can Google their answers, and then at the same time when they are asking, having interviews with other teachers, this comes as a form of a play to them.
Well, Debbie, before we go, earlier we saw that, that it requires some time, I think, on the part of teachers to also be able to regroup, check in, and then be able to plan lessons, right? Yes. So how do you think the recent moves are going to impact preschool teachers like yourself on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm referring to non-contact time. So my organization and ourselves, we do have centers who have tried out non-contact time. It is very beneficial for the teachers because they are able to have this protected time out of their classrooms to focus on research, reading up, to focus on planning for the children's learning, and that quiet time that the educators get, they get very focused, and in turn it gives a quality education for the children.
Well, Debbie, Sheena, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. I've been chatting with Sheena Tan and Debbie Ong from the early childhood sector.